Jai Hind everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel, which is Explore Yourselves, Banking, and General Knowledge, etc. Today I am going to describe my short story, The Power of Gratitude in Creating Happiness. The small town of Chandipur lay peacefully beside a slow moving river that reflected the changing colors of the sky like a giant mirror painted by nature itself. The town was neither famous nor wealthy, yet too possessed an unusual charm that visitors often found difficult to describe. Narrow streets wound gently between old houses decorated with flowering vines. Children laughed while chasing one another beneath enormous banyan trees, and elderly neighbors spent their evenings sharing stories on wooden benches outside their homes. Life appeared simple from the outside, but every family carried its own invisible burdens. Among the residents lived 38 years old Aarav, a hard-working accountant employed by a modest trading company. Although he earned enough to provide for his wife, Mira, and their 12-year-old daughter, Anaya, he constantly believed life had been unfair to him. Every morning he woke up with a list of complaints already forming in his mind before he even stepped out of bed. If the weather was too hot, he complained. If rain interrupted his commute, he complained. If his colleagues received appreciations, he believed fate favored everyone except him. His conversations became dominated by comparisons, disappointments, and endless frustrations. Slowly, without realizing it, he had trained his mind to notice everything, missing while overlooking everything already present. Mira often watched her husband with quiet concerns because she remembered a very different Arab from the early years of their marriage. Back then, he had laughed easily, celebrated even the smallest successes, and believed every difficulty carried a lesson waiting to be discovered. Over the years, however, increasing responsibilities, rising expenses, workplace competitions, and constant exposure to other people's achievements through social media had transformed his outlook. Every evening he returned home exhausted, not because of the amount of work he performed, but because of the weight of dissatisfaction he carried. During dinner, he would describe how someone else had purchased a larger house, how another colleague had bought a luxurious car, or how an old classmate had become wealthy. Anaya would excitedly tell him about drawing competitions, science projects, or stories from school, yet he barely listened because his thoughts remained trapped inside comparisons. Mira gently reminded him that their family enjoyed good health, lived together peacefully, and possessed everything necessary for a comfortable life. But Arab dismissed her words as unrealistic optimism. Gratitude doesn't pay bills. He often replied, believing happiness would naturally arrive only after achieving greater wealth, higher status, and complete security. On Monday morning, the company's manager director announced a major restructuring that created widespread anxiety among the employees. Although no one immediately lost their job, several departments were merged, responsibilities increased, and promotions were postponed indefinitely. Arav interpreted the announcement as yet another personal injustice. Throughout the day, he muttered under his breath, convinced destiny had singled him out for disappointment once again. During lunch, his older colleague Devendra quietly observed Arab's frustrations without interrupting. Devendra had worked here for nearly 4 decades and would retire within the year. His calm demeanor puzzled everyone because he remained cheerful regardless of changing circumstances. Even after surviving serious illness, financial setbacks, and family tragedies, he continued greeting every person with genuine warmth. That afternoon, when most employees had returned to work, Devendra invited Arab to share tea at a roadside stall outside the office. Steam rose gently from two clay caps as traffic passed noisily nearby. Instead of offering advice immediately, Devendra simply asked, tell me honestly, when was the last time you thanked life for something without expecting anything in return? Arav frowned, believing the question irrelevant. He answered after a long silence, I don't remember. Has not been much worth thanking lately. Devendra smiled kindly rather than arguing. He reached into his worn leather bag and removed an old notebook whose cover had faded with age. Every page contained handwritten entries dated over many years. Some described major milestones such as the birth of grandchildren or successful medical treatments, while others mentioned surprisingly ordinary moments. The fragrance of fresh rain, a stranger returning a lost wallet, a delicious mango shared with neighbors, a pain-free morning after illness, or hearing birds sing before sunrise. Aarav looked confused. Devendra explained that nearly 20 years earlier, after losing both his parents within months of each other, grief had consumed him so completely that every day felt empty. During the difficult period, an elderly monk had suggested writing down three blessings every night, regardless of how insignificant they appeared. Initially, Devendra considered the exercise foolish, but he reluctantly continued because he had nothing else to lose. Weeks gradually became months, and something remarkable happened. His external circumstances remained largely unchanged, yet his inner vision transformed. Instead of unconsciously searching for problems, his mind began recognizing kindness, opportunities, beauty, resilience, and hope that had always existed around him. Gratitude had not removed suffering, but it had prevented suffering from becoming the only story he told himself. Although Arab listened politely, skepticism dominated his thoughts. He believed positive thinking belonged to people who had already succeeded in life, not to ordinary individuals struggling with responsibilities. Nevertheless, Devendra's peaceful expression lingered in his memory throughout the evening. Before sleeping, Arab unexpectedly noticed Anaya arranging her school books while humming softly. Mira sat nearby repairing a loose button on his shirt instead of buying a new one, smiling contentedly despite the simplicity of their surroundings. For a brief moment, he wondered why they appeared happier than he felt despite sharing the same circumstances. Unable to sleep, he opened an unused notebook lying inside a drawer. Feeling slightly embarrassed, even though no one watched him, he wrote his first gratitude list. The entries seemed almost childish. My family is healthy. I have a roof over my head. I ate 3 meals today. Looking at the page, he felt no sudden miracle or emotional transformation. Closing the notebook, he laughed quietly at himself and concluded that nothing meaningful would come from such simple exercise. Days turned into weeks, yet Arab continued writing each night more out of curiosity than conviction. At first, the entries remained repetitive, but gradually he found himself observing details previously ignored. He appreciated the elderly vegetable seller who always added fresh coriander without charging extra, the bus conductor who patiently waited while an elderly passenger climbed the road, the cool breeze arriving unexpectedly after an intensely hot afternoon, and the laughter echoing through the neighborhood when children organized impromptu cricket matches. The notebook slowly filled with hundreds of teeny moments that had always existed but had escaped his attention because dissatisfaction occupied every corner of his thinking. Something subtle shifted inside him. He still encountered stressful situations, yet complaints no longer consumed entire evenings. Mira noticed that he listened more attentively during family conversations. Anaya happily shared school experiences, knowing her father now responded with genuine interest rather than distracted notes. Their home itself had not changed, but its emotional atmosphere felt lighter, warmer, and more welcoming. One Saturday, while returning from the market carrying groceries, Arup witnessed an accident at a busy intersection. A motorcyclist had slipped on loose gravel and fallen heavily onto the road. Many pedestrians gathered immediately, but hesitations prevented anyone from acting. Without consciously thinking, Arup rushed forward the two other strangers. Together they carefully moved the injured man away from traffic, called an ambulance, and contacted his family using the phone found in his pocket. As the ambulance reported, the injured man's young son arrived, tears streaming down his face. Grasping Arab's hands tightly, the boy repeatedly whispered, "Thank you for helping my father." Those simple words remained with Arab long after he returned home. That evening his gratitude journal contained a very different entry. Instead of Listing positions, he wrote, "Today I was grateful for having the opportunity to help someone when they needed it most." Reading the sentence several times, he realized gratitude was expanding beyond appreciations for personal blessings. It was beginning to connect him more deeply with the lives of others. Several weeks later, the company organized its annual employee review meeting. Previously, Aarav would have approached such events with anxiety and resentment, expecting disappointment before hearing any results. This time, he entered the conference room carrying a quieter mind. During discussions, he noticed younger employees appearing nervous and uncertain, rather than focusing exclusively on his own concerns. He voluntarily assisted to newly hired accountants struggling with unfamiliar reporting software. The department manager observed his patience and teamwork throughout the week. Although promotions remained frozen because of company policy, Arup unexpectedly received formal recognitions for mentoring colleagues and improving overall efficiency. The certificate itself carried no financial reward, yet the appreciation felt meaningful because it reflected qualities beyond technical performances. Walking home that evening, Arup realized something surprising. Recognitions had arrived only after he stepped obviously chasing it. By concentrating on contributing rather than comparing, he had unknowingly become the kind of colleague others genuinely valued. Around the same period, Anaya's school announced an essay competition titled "The Happiest Person I Know." Excited students spent days interviewing grandparents, teachers, neighbors, and relatives before writing their submissions. One evening, Anaya shyly approached her father with notebook and asked whether she could interview him. Arab laughed, assuming she wanted help completing her homework. Instead, she looked at him thoughtfully and asked, "Papa, what makes a person truly happy?" The question lingered in the room like gentle music. Months earlier, he would have answered money, success, and security. Now those words no longer felt complete. After reflecting carefully, he replied, "I think happiness grows when we stop measuring our life against someone else's and begin noticing the blessings already walking beside us every day." Gratitude does not mean pretending life is perfect. It means refusing to let imperfections hide everything beautiful. Anaya smiled while writing his answer. Several days later, her essay won first prize. During the school assembly, she read aloud that the happiest person she knew was her father, not because he was rich or famous, but because he had recently learned to appreciate ordinary moments with extraordinary sincerity. Sitting among the audiences, Arup felt tears forming unexpectedly. For years he had searched outside himself for evidence of success, yet one of life's greatest compliments had quietly arrived from his own daughter. That evening, after the celebration ended, Arup walked alone beside the river where countless evenings of his childhood had once been spent. The setting sun painted the water with shades of gold and crimson, while gentle ripples carried reflections far beyond the horizon. He remembered how often he had hurried through the life believing happiness waited somewhere ahead in a larger house, a higher salary, a prestigious title, or perfect circumstances. Yet every destination had merely created another expectations. Standing beside the calm river, he finally understood that gratitude was not the reward received after becoming happy. Instead, gratitude was the path that quietly created happiness from within, allowing ordinary days to reveal extraordinary richness that had existed all along. The transformation that had begun quietly within Arav did not go unnoticed for long. Human behavior has an invisible way of influencing the atmosphere around it, much like the fragrance of a blooming flower gradually filling an entire garden without making any sound. At the office, colleagues who had once avoided him because of his constant negativity slowly found themselves seeking his company during lunch breaks and tea intervals. Earlier, Arab had been known for identifying problems before anyone else and discussing them repeatedly without searching for solutions. Now, although he remained realistic and acknowledged genuine difficulties, he had developed the habit of asking a different questions whenever challenges arose. Instead of saying, "Why does this always happen to us?" He began asking, what can we learn from this situation and what still remains in our favor? The subtle difference surprised everyone. His words no longer drained energy from conversations. Instead, they encouraged constructive thinking. Employees working under tight deadlines noticed that Arav remained calm even when unexpected mistakes appeared in financial reports. He patiently guided junior staff through corrections without raising his voice or as assigning blame. The workplace itself had not become less demanding, but the emotional climate surrounding Arab had changed significantly because gratitude had quietly replaced habitual dissatisfaction. What fascinated him most was that this transformation required no expensive seminar, motivational speech, or miracle. It had begun with a few sincere sentences written nightly in an ordinary notebook. One afternoon, the company's internet server crashed unexpectedly, just 2 days before important financial statements had to be submitted. Panic spread quickly through every department as employees feared missing regulatory deadlines. Managers rushed from one desk to another, attempting to coordinate emergency measures, while technicians struggled to restore the system. Months earlier, Aarav would have become one of the loudest voices criticizing management and predicting disastrous consequences. Instead, he gathered several colleagues and suggested organizing available paper records, manually verifying calculations, and preparing documents that could later be uploaded once the system returned. His calm leadership prevented confusion from becoming chaos. Seeing everyone working together without unnecessary arguments reminded him that difficult situations often reveal hidden strength impossible to notice during comfortable times. Late that evening, after the server was finally restored, the managing director personally thanked the entire accounting department for maintaining composure under pressure. Walking home beneath the sky filled with countless stars, Aro realized that gratitude had given him something far more valuable than temporary happiness. It had strengthened his ability to remain emotionally balanced even when circumstances became uncertain. As the weeks passed, Arup began observing gratitude beyond his personal experiences. He noticed it reflected in people whose lives contained struggles far greater than his own. Every morning, while waiting for his bus, he often saw an elderly woman named Kamala selling handmade flower garlands near the temple entrance. Despite her modest earnings and advancing age, she greeted every customer with genuine warmth and folded her hands respectfully after each sale, whispering a quiet blessing under her breath. Curious one morning, Arup purchased several garlands, although he needed only one. During their conversations, he learned that Kamala lived alone after losing both her husband and son many years earlier. Here she spoke not of loneliness but of thankfulness that she still possessed the strength to work independently. That generous neighbors occasionally shared meals with her, and that each sunrise allowed another opportunity to spread fragrance through the flowers she carefully arranged. Arav returned home deeply moved. He had spent years believing gratitude belonged only to those who enjoyed comfortable lives. Yet here stood a woman possessing little material wealth while radiating an inner peace many prosperous individuals never experienced. Around the same time, Anoya's school announced a community service initiative encouraging students and their families to volunteer at a nearby children's shelter every weekend for 1 month. Initially, Arav hesitated because weekends had always been reserved for resting after demanding work weeks. Nevertheless, Anaya's excitement persuaded him to participate. The shelter cared for children who had lost parents or had been abandoned under heartbreaking circumstances. Arav expected to encounter sadness and despair, but instead he found laughter echoing through playgrounds, colorful decorating classroom walls, and children enthusiastically sharing toys despite owning very little. During one visit, an 8-year-old boy named Rohan proudly showed Arav a small wooden toy car he had built from discarded scraps collected outside a carpenter's workshop. Holding the rough but carefully crafted toy with sparkling eyes, Ron declared it to be the finest racing car in the world. His imagination transformed ordinary pieces of waste into treasured possessions. Watching the child celebrate something so simple awakened another realization within Aarav. Gratitude often flourished not because people possessed abundance, but because they appreciated whatever abundance they already had, regardless of its size. Inspired by these experiences, Aarav proposed an idea during one family dinner. Instead of celebrating only birthdays and major festivals with great gifts, he suggested creating a weekly gratitude evening. Every Sunday after dinner, each family member would share three experiences from the previous week for which they felt genuinely thankful. The idea seemed simple, yet it soon became the most anticipated traditions in their household. Mira spoke about neighbors who had to help to carry groceries during heavy rain, delicious meals prepared together despite busy schedules, and the comfort of evening conversations after long days. Anaya expressed gratitude for encouraging teachers, loyal friends, successful science experiments, and opportunities to learn new skills. Arav himself mentioned acts of kindness from strangers, peaceful walks beside the river, meaningful conversations with colleagues, and moments when difficulties unexpectedly led to valuable lessons. Occasionally they laughed while recalling amusing incidents. At other times, they grew emotionally, remembering people whose compassion had quietly changed their lives. These evenings gradually strengthened the family's emotional bond because gratitude encouraged them to focus not merely on achievements but on relationships, experiences, and shared moments that the money alone could never purchase. Months later, Chondipur experienced one of the heaviest monsoon seasons in decades. Continuous rainfall caused the river to overflow, flooding several neighborhoods situated along its banks. Many families lost household belongings, crops were damaged, and temporary shelters had to be established inside schools and community halls. Arob immediately joined local volunteers distributing food, blankets, medicines, and drinking water. During relief work, he witnessed scenes of heartbreaking loss, families standing beside damaged homes, elderly people searching through muddy belongings, and children trying to rescue soaked school books. Yet, alongside sorrow, he also witnessed extraordinary generosity. Shopkeepers donated essential supplies without seeking publicity. College students spent entire nights filling sandbags. Doctors treated patients free of charge despite exhausting schedules. Women cooked enormous quantities of food in community kitchens, while young volunteers delivered meals door to door using small boats. Arup realized disasters often revealed two contrasting realities simultaneously. Nature displayed its immense power, yet human compassion displayed an equally remarkable strength. Amid destruction, gratitude emerged not because suffering disappeared, but because kindness multiplied. During one relief distributions, Arup met an elderly retired school teacher named Professor Harish Mukherjee, whose modest home had been severely damaged by flood waters. Volunteers expected him to complain bitterly about his losses. Instead, the elderly man smiled gently while helping organize supplies for families whose conditions were even worse than his own. Curious, Arav asked how he managed to remain so composed after losing nearly everything accumulated over decades. Professor Mukherjee looked thoughtfully toward the flooded streets before answering. Young man, possessions can disappear overnight. Gratitude teaches us to value what flood waters cannot carry away. Our character, relationships, knowledge, faith, and the kindness we receive from others. Houses may be rebuilt, savings may return, and furniture may be replaced, but if bitterness floods the heart, rebuilding becomes far more difficult. Those words remained etched in Arab's memory long after the waters receded. They reminded him that gratitude was not denial of pain, but recognition that even painful chapters rarely erased every blessings from life. Following the floods, Chandipur organized a town-wide cultural gatherings to honor volunteers who had contributed during the emergency. Local musicians, school children, artisans, and community organizations participated enthusiastically. Much to his surprise, Aarav was invited to speak briefly about volunteer experiences. Standing before hundreds of familiar faces, he felt unexpectedly nervous. Public speaking had never been his strength. Yet, as he looked across the audiences, memories of the past year unfolded vividly in his mind. He spoke not about his own efforts, but about the countless ordinary individuals who had performed extraordinary acts without expecting recognitions. He described the flower sale seller who remained thankful despite hardship, children who shared scarce possessions with friends, colleagues who supported one another during workplace crises, and neighbors who opened their homes to flood victims. Finally, he concluded by saying, gratitude does not wait for perfect circumstances before entering our lives. It quietly changes the way we see imperfect circumstances. The happiest communities are not those with its fewest problems, but those where people continue appreciating one another even while solving those problems together. His words received warm applause, but what touched him most was seeing several audiences members weeping away tears as they reflected upon their own experiences. News of Arab's speech spread thoroughly Chandipur faster than he expected. Soon afterward, the principal of Anay's school invited him to address senior students during their annual value education program. Unsure whether young minds would find his experiences interesting, Arav prepared carefully. Instead of delivering a formal lecture filled with quotations, he carried his gratitude notebook, the same ordinary notebook he had begun almost reluctantly many months earlier, showing students page after page filled with simple handwritten entries. He explained that lasting happiness rarely arrived through dramatic events. Rather, it accumulated quietly through daily appreciations of small blessings that many people ignored. He encouraged every student to write down three genuine reasons for gratitude every night before sleeping, regardless of whether the day had been successful or disappointing. Some students smiled skeptically, just as he once had, while others listened attentively. Before leaving, he reminded them that gratitude was like exercising a muscle. The more consistently it was practiced, the stronger it became until eventually the mind naturally searched for hope instead of despair. Several months passed, and winter arrived with crisp mornings wrapped in soft mist. Chandipur celebrated its annual fair beside the river, filling the town with colorful decorations, music, delicious food, handcrafts, and joyful gatherings. Families strolled leisurely among briefly lit stalls, while children enjoyed giant swings and puppet shows. Arav, Meera, and Anaya spent an entire evening exploring the fair together. At one stall, visitors were invited to write anonymous messages expressing gratitude to someone who had positively influenced their lives. The organizers planned to display these messages on a large wall of thankfulness. Arav stood silently holding a blank card, wondering whom he should thank. Many names crossed his mind: his parents, his wife, his daughter, Devendra, Professor Mukherjee, Kamala, colleagues, teachers, and even strangers whose kindness had shaped unexpected moments. Finally, he wrote, "Thank you to every person who reminded me that happiness begins not with having everything, but with appreciating that what already surrounds us." Reading hundreds of other heartfelt messages displayed across the wall, he realized the gratitude connected completely strangers through invisible threads of shared humanity. Not long afterward, Devendra officially retired from the company after 40 years of dedicated service. During the farewell ceremony, colleagues praised his professionalism, wisdom, and unwavering kindness. When invited to deliver his farewell speech, Devendra surprised everyone by inviting Aarav to stand beside him. Smiling warmly, the elderly man addressed the gathering. People often think experience means knowing more facts or solving more problems. He began, but real experience means discovering what truly matters before life teaches the lessons too late. A year ago, I shared a simple notebook with one colleague. Today, I see that notebook has become far more valuable than I ever imagined because gratitude grows strongest when passed from one heart to another. Turning toward Arab, He quietly handed him the old notebook he had first shown months earlier. Keep this now, he said. It reminded me to appreciate life. Perhaps one day it will spare someone else through you. Aarav accepted the notebook with deep emotions, understanding that some gifts could never be measured by their material value. That night, after everyone had fallen asleep, Aarav placed Devendra's notebook beside his own on the table. One represented decades of gratitude accumulated through a lifetime of joys and sorrows. The other represented the beginning of his own journey toward lasting happiness. Opening both notebooks simultaneously, he noticed an extraordinary similarity. Despite being written by different people across different years, neither focused primarily on wealth, luxury, or achievements. Instead, they celebrated relationships, health, forgiveness, learning, compassion, resilience, beauty, opportunities to help others, and moments of unexpected grace. Smiling quietly, Arav realized that grateful hearts, regardless of age or circumstances, often recognize the same treasures hidden within ordinary life. Winter gradually gave way to spring, and Chandipur awakened beneath canopies of flowering trees whose blossoms painted the streets with shades of pink, yellow, and white. Morning air carried the fragrance of jasmine and the cheerful songs of birds returning after the colder months. Life resumed its familiar rhythm, yet something within Arav had changed so profoundly that even ordinary days appeared richer than before. He no longer hurried through each sunrise as though it were merely another step toward some distant destination. Instead, he had learned to pause, breathe deeply, and acknowledge the quiet miracles that unnoticed around him every single way. While sipping his morning tea on the veranda, he watched sunlight slowly creep across neighboring rooftops, children laughing as they hurried toward school, milk vendors greeting familiar customers with cheerful smiles, and elderly couples enjoying gentle walks together before the town became busy. These moments required neither money nor external circumstances, yet together they created an emotional richness that had remained invisible during the years when dissatisfaction clouded his thinking. Gratitude had not yet altered the world outside his window, it had simply polished the lens through which he viewed it. On Monday morning, the company received unexpected news that another large organization intended to merge with their business. Rumors spread rapidly throughout every department, and uncertainty once again settled over the employees like an approaching storm. Some feared layoffs, others worried about transfers, while many spent entire days speculating about worst-case scenarios. Arav listened patiently to the discussions, but registers becoming trapped by fear before facts becoming clear. During lunch, several younger employees gathered around him seeking advice because they admired the calmness he had displayed during previous challenges. Rather than offering false assurance, he encouraged them to prepare professionally for every possible outcome while refusing to surrender emotionally to assumptions. He reminded them that anxiety often steals peace long before any real problem arrives. Gratitude, he explained gently, does not promise that tomorrow will always be easy. It reminds us that today's strength, relationships, skills, and experiences will help us face tomorrow, whatever it brings. His words did not eliminate uncertainty, but they gave his colleagues something stronger than empty optimism, a practical confidence rooted in appreciation for the resources they already possessed. Several weeks later, Arav received an unexpected phone call from his younger cousin Nikhil, who lived in another city. Years earlier, a misunderstanding involving inherited family property had created bitterness between their families. Gradually, phone calls stopped, festivals were celebrated separately, and even important family events passed without such communications. Time had transformed silence into habit. Now, after nearly 8 years, Nikhil's hesitant voice broke the silence. He explained that his father had recently suffered a mild heart attack and had repeatedly expressed regret over the broken relationship. Arup felt a mixture of surprise, sadness, and compassion. The old version of himself might have reopened every painful memory and demanded apologies before reconciliations. Instead, gratitude had quietly taught him that relationships were among life's greatest blessings precisely because they were fragile. The following weekend, Aarav traveled with Mira and Anaya to visit his uncle. Tears replaced years of resentment as family members embraced one another without needing lengthy explanations. Sitting beside his recovering uncle's hospital bed, Aarav silently thanked life for providing a second chance that many families never receive. Forgiveness, he realized, often grows naturally in hearts already filled with gratitude because grateful people recognize that love is infinitely more valuable than prolonged resentment. As reconciliations restored family bonds, another opportunity unexpectedly appeared before Aarav. The local public library, struggling with declining membership and limited funding, sought volunteers willing to organize motivational reading sessions for children and young adults. Remembering how books had shaped his own thinking during difficult years, Aarav eagerly agreed. Every Saturday afternoon, he gathered groups of enthusiastic students beneath the library's old ceiling fans and introduced them to inspiring stories from different cultures, historical biographies, and timeless moral tales. Yet instead of merely reading aloud, he encouraged discussions about courage, compassion, perseverance, honesty, and gratitude. Students eagerly shared personal experiences of helping neighbors, appreciating teachers, overcoming fears, or learning valuable lessons from failure. Week after week, the library transformed from a quiet building filled with shelves into a lively meeting place where young minds exchanged ideas and encouraged one another. Arav often returned home feeling that he had received far more than he had given. Gratitude had taught him that meaningful service enriched both the persons receiving help and the one offering it. One particular Saturday, a shy 14-year-old girl named Kabba remained behind after the reading session ended. She quietly admitted that she had been struggling with sadness because her family constantly compared her academic performances with that of her older brother, who consistently ranked first in school. Despite working hard, she never felt good enough. Arab listened carefully before sharing lessons from his own life. He explained how competition had once stolen years of his happiness by convincing him that someone else's success diminished his own worth. He encouraged Kabba to begin keeping a gratitude journal focused not only on external blessings but also on her personal strengths, acts of kindness, lessons learned, and moments of progress. Yours value, he told her gently, cannot be measured by someone else's achievements. Gratitude helps us recognize the unique gifts already growing within ourselves. Several months later, Kabba returned with a beautifully decorated notebook filled with thoughtful reflections. Although her grades had improved only modestly, her confidence had blossomed remarkably because she had stopped measuring herself against impossible standards. Witnessing her transformation reminded Arav that gratitude possesses the extraordinary ability to heal invisible wounds hidden deep within the human heart. Around this time, Mira decided to revive a long forgotten passion for painting. Years earlier, family responsibilities had gradually pushed her artistic interest aside. Encouraged by Arav, she began creating colorful landscapes inspired by Chandipur's rivers, gardens, temples, and bustling the marketplaces. At first, she painted simply for personal enjoyment, but neighbors admired her work and requested small paintings for their homes. Eventually, the town's cultural association invited her to display several pieces during an annual art exhibition. On the evening of the exhibition's inauguration, visitors praised not only the beauty of her paintings but also the warmth and serenity they conveyed. One journalist asked Mira what inspired such peaceful scenes. Smiling toward Arab, standing quietly across the room, she replied, when gratitude fills a home, even ordinary landscapes begin looking extraordinary. Arab felt deeply moved because he understood that her words reflected far more than artistic inspiration. Their household itself had become a place where appreciation replaced constant criticism, encouragement replaced comparison, and shared joy replaced habitual complaint. Months continued passing, bringing new opportunities alongside fresh challenges. One evening, Anaya returned home, visibly upset after learning that her closest friend would soon move to another city because of her father's job transfer. She worried their friendship would slowly disappear with distance. Sitting together and on the veranda beneath a sky glowing with countless stars, Aarav gently reminded her that gratitude allows people to celebrate beautiful chapters without allowing sadness over endings to erase happy memories. They spent the evenings recalling countless adventures the girls had shared, school picnics, birthday celebrations, science projects, bicycle rides, and hours of laughter over simple games. Instead of focusing only on the approaching separations, they wrote a heartfelt scrapbook filled with photographs, handwritten memories, drawings, and messages expressing appreciation for their friendship. When Anaya presented the scrapbook before her friend departed, both girls embraced with tears in their eyes, promising to remain connected despite the distance. Watching them, Arav reflected that gratitude transforms even painful goodbyes into celebrations of relationships worth remembering. One bright Sunday morning, Chandipur organized its first festival of gratitude, inspired partly by the growing enthusiasm generated through schools, volunteer groups, and local organizations. Citizens decorated the town square with colorful banners carrying messages encouraging kindness, appreciations, and community spirit. People were invited to write letters thanking teachers, parents, healthcare workers, sanitation staff, farmers, police officers, shopkeepers, and countless others whose daily efforts often went unnoticed. Musical performances, storytelling sessions, cultural programs, and community meals created an atmosphere of genuine togetherness rather than competition. Aarav was invited to coordinate one activity called the Tree of Thankfulness. A large artificial tree stood in the center of the square, and visitors attached handwritten leaves expressing gratitude for people or experiences that had enriched their lives. By evening, every branch overflowed with colorful messages. Reading them quietly, Arup noticed remarkable similarities. Few people thanked life primarily for luxury or fame. Most expressed appreciation for parents' sacrifices, loyal friendship, recovered health, second chances, acts of forgiveness, loving families, supportive teachers, peaceful mornings, meaningful work, and opportunities to help others. The tree stood as silent proof that humanity's deepest treasures often remain invisible until viewed through grateful eyes. As the festival concluded, Professor Horace Mukherjee approached Arav with a thoughtful smile. Although advancing age had slowed his steps, his wisdom remained as sharp as ever. Together they walked beside the river, where calm waters reflected the glow of the setting sun. After a comfortable silence, the professor remarked, "Do you remember our conversations after the flood?" Arav nodded warmly. The elderly teacher continued, "People often misunderstand gratitude. They think it belongs only to moments of celebration. But true gratitude reveals its greatest strength during seasons of uncertainty because it reminds us that every difficulty exists alongside blessings we still possess. Happiness is not the absence of sorrow, it is the presence of hope, appreciation, and purpose, even while sorrow visits." Arav listened quietly, recognizing how accurately those words described his own journey. He realized that gratitude had never promised a life without a disappointment. Instead, it had gradually taught him to carry disappointment without allowing it to extinguish joy. That evening, after returning home, Arav opened the notebook that had become his faithful companion over many months. The early pages revealed a man who struggled merely to identify three reasons for thankfulness. Later entries reflected glowing awareness of simple pleasures. Still later came reflections on forgiveness, service, resilience, relationships, and personal growth. Smiling softly, he turned to a fresh page and wrote, "Today I am grateful not because life has become perfect, but because I have finally learned that perfection was never required for happiness to exist." Closing the notebook, he looked around the room where Mira quietly arranged fresh flowers in a vase while Anaya completed her homework nearby. Outside, gentle evening breezes carried the distant laughter of neighbors enjoying another peaceful night in Chandipur. Arup realized that the happiness he had spent years searching for in distant achievements had patiently waited beside him all alone. In ordinary conversations, shared meals, meaningful work, forgiving hearts, generous strangers, faithful friendships, and countless unnoticed blessings that gratitude had finally taught him to see. Conclusions. As the years passed, Aarav often reflected upon the remarkable journey that had transformed not only his own life but also the lives of everyone connected to him. He realized that happiness had never been hidden behind wealth, prestige, or perfect circumstances, but had quietly existed within ordinary moments that gratitude had taught him to recognize. Every sunrise, every shared meal, every word of encouragement, every challenge that strengthened his character, every act of kindness received from strangers, every opportunity to forgive, every chance to help someone in need, and every precious moment spent with loved ones had become invaluable treasures because he had learned to appreciate them wholeheartedly. Gratitude had not removed every obstacle from his path, nor had it guaranteed a life free from disappointment, uncertainty, or sorrow. But it had given him something far more meaningful, a peaceful heart capable of finding hope even during difficult times, and joy even in life's simplest experiences. He understood that genuine happiness is not a destination reached after achieving every dream, but a way of living that grows stronger each day through appreciation, compassion, humility, and contentment. Looking around at his family, friends, neighbors, and thriving community that had embraced the spirit of thankfulness, Arav smiled with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the greatest wealth anyone could ever possess was not measured by material success, by grateful heart that recognizes the countless blessings already present in everyday life. From that day forward, he continued filling the pages of his gratitude journal, not because life had become perfect, but because he had finally discovered that gratitude itself was the key that unlocked lasting happiness, meaningful relationships, inner peace, and a life truly worth celebrating. Disclaimer: the story is a complete work of fiction created solely for inspirational, educational, and entertainment purposes. All characters, names, places, organizations, incidents, conversations, and events described in this story are entirely imaginary, and any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, businesses, institutions, or real life events is purely coincidental and unintentional. The ideas and reflections presented are intended to encourage readers to appreciate the positive role that gratitude, kindness, compassion, forgiveness, and optimism can play in everyday life. But they should not be interpreted as psychological, medical, financial, legal, or professional advice. Individual experiences, circumstances, and outcomes may vary, and readers are encouraged to seek appropriate professional guidance whenever necessary. Thank you very much for your patience. Request for like, subscribe, and share.